Have you thought recently, am I the only one using my brain? Have you considered why they keep asking you the same question over and over and over again? Are you getting frustrated with the people that work with you and for you? If yes, I have the answers. We can fix this problem. I am Melissa Franks, your host of the Opt-in podcast, and this is where we go from surviving to thriving in business. And I always seem to think that the fourth quarter of the year, or whatever your busy season is, if you're an accountant, it would be April and October. Every business has their busy season, whatever it is. Right now, most of the people that I'm talking to, fourth quarter is it for them. And the busy season tells no lies. The busy season will put a spotlight on all of the challenges in your business, all of the flaws. It will show you exactly the areas where your business can improve. It just does. And I recently had somebody ask me if I like to start working with clients when they're slow so that I can onboard easily and I can do things. And my answer emphatically was no. My favorite time, my most recommended time for me to work with anybody is when they're at their busiest, because it just helps me see so clearly what's going on. It saves everybody time and it can speed up the transformation of the business, whatever it needs to be, because there is no time for everybody to be on their best behavior. And because we're in, for many businesses, what is the busy season, one of the conversations I find myself in over and over and over again, and it's in like random places. Like I literally was at a end of season baseball party with my kids' team. I didn't even know what any of the parents did, and then ended up at a table for a very long time with multiple business owners having a discussion about how to get their team motivated to do what they need to do. I was like, man, this is weird. I've sat with these people. I probably spent like 6 weekends of my life with these people. I didn't know that they owned a business, let alone they were all having the same problem. And then, I get back to my desk and I get back to things that are going on, and I realize that they're not the only ones. And that like all of a sudden there's this outbreak, there's this theme of issues with team dynamics and performance and productivity and efficiency. And I'm like, what's the deal? Like, did everybody drink the same Kool-Aid? Are we all having a moment? Like, is everybody overwhelmed? What's going on? And then I had to pause and say, Melissa, that is just like when you are thinking about buying a car and you've narrowed it down to one or two options, and then the only cars that you see out on the roads are the cars that you want to buy. Your brain points out patterns to you, and that is all that is happening. There is not a crisis happening. Things are not worse in team dynamics and small business than they were 3 months ago. It's just you're seeing it, and it's coming to your attention because you're asking about it. And because I'm having so many conversations about the topic, we're going to just get into brass tacks here. The biggest obstacle in every team, it does not matter how big your business is or how small your business is. It does not matter if you own your business or you work for somebody else. It does not matter if you're a billion-dollar corporation or you're a small business trying to get to 6 figures. The biggest challenge that every single team has is definition of roles, clarity of responsibilities, and consistent accountability. That's it. That's the root of all evil. All of the problems that you're facing can be solved with those 3 things. So I'm going to end the podcast now. Kidding. I want to talk about it. I want to break it down. I want to say what it means, because I have talked enough in this podcast about the importance of job descriptions, but I don't think that like we're getting it. I don't think that you understand why it's necessary. So we're going to talk through a couple of examples of what's going on out in the real world and how just a few slight adjustments and changes can go from super frustrated and you thinking nobody's using their brain to time freedom, stress-free, enjoying your weekends, having your vacation, doing all of those things. It literally can happen with the flip of a switch if you do a few things intentionally. And it's not hard. It just requires effort. Okay? So the first things first, we need to talk about role clarity, especially in a small business or a team that has been intact for a really, really, really long time. The lines between each of the various roles, disciplines, departments, etc., become really blurry. And that's because, generally speaking, you have a bunch of individuals that want to succeed, that when they see somebody stumble, when they see that they can help, when they see that they're better at something, they just step in and do. And then when they step in and do enough over time, they end up just being the one, except that they're not supposed to be the one, somebody else is supposed to. And so things start to get a little bit fuzzy. And then when things get really busy or tense or results aren't what we hoped they would be, or you, the manager, the owner, the CEO, the whatever, start to pay a little bit more attention, everybody gets a little bit tense and nervous, and then they go to their compound. They pull out their job description. They're like, this is my hill. This is what I'm responsible for. And you know what happens is they start just doing the things that are on their description, a part of their role, and all that extra stuff that they were pitching in to help with, it just sits in the messy middle. Because the things that they weren't doing, the things that somebody else was doing because they were better at it or they didn't know how to do it or like whatever, they just go by the wayside. And so what ends up happening over time when you have a lack of focus, when you descriptions or don't have role descriptions, and it's really murky who's supposed to be doing what, when, and how, and where, is that when things go sideways, fingers start pointing in all directions. The problem is when everybody's responsible and accountable, nobody is responsible and accountable. So that is why the very first place that I like to start is role descriptions. So make sure that everybody has one. Job description, role description, whatever you want. Make sure everybody has one. Make sure it is specific. Make sure that it is leveled. Do you know what leveled means? Leveled means that you are clear around where they are in the hierarchy. I know you want everybody to be equal. I get it. This is going to be important later on when your business or your team grows and you need to know who's reporting to who. So don't call somebody a director who can't actually manage a bunch of managers. Don't call somebody a manager that can't manage a bunch of people. The words specialist and coordinator are your best friends. So make sure that you have the level right in the title. Then be specific. What specifically are they responsible for? What specific skills must they have? How specifically will you measure their performance? That's only step one, though, because a part of having role clarity is you enforcing the role definition. Yep, buck stops with you. You're going to hire them. You're going to tell them, based on this wage that I am giving you, these are the things you're giving back to the business. That is your contract. That is your transaction. And then you repeat it. And you repeat it, and then you repeat it, and you check in, and you make sure, and you course correct. And when they start to do things that are not their things to do, you send them back in the right direction, and you give that work back to the person who's supposed to be doing it. And you gatekeep, and you monitor, and you're the referee. And your job is to make sure that everybody remains clear on what they are and are not supposed to do. Before we can talk about anything else, if you are not monitoring and controlling the situation, if you are not clear with expectations and requirements of each person on the team, and ensuring that those expectations and requirements are not duplicative or overlap, then you're at fault for the finger pointing. So stop getting frustrated with them. Stop wondering why they can't figure stuff out on their own. The reason is because you have confused them. I probably should have started this podcast and said that most of this was going to be a little bit of tough love to the manager, CEO, business owner, etc., because that's what this is. Ultimately, you set the tone. So whether you have one person or 75 people, the foundation of a high-performing team is that every single individual person knows what they're responsible for, how they fit into the bigger picture, and has somebody supervising them that makes sure that they stay in their lane. Now, I get it. Small businesses are scrappy and they are nimble and they are dynamic and they need to be fluid. And many a times, because the moment presents itself, that one person may need to step out of their role and go above and beyond. And that's okay for a moment in time. A moment in time is a day, a launch period, a sale promotion. A moment in time is not 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 3 years. That's a change to their role permanently. And you can change their role. You can add responsibilities. You can remove responsibilities. You can change their leveling. You know what that comes with? A conversation. That comes with you sitting down and saying, if I'm going to change their role and I'm going to add these things or remove these things or change this level of responsibility, then this is the title, this is the level, and this is the compensation that they should be given. You have to work through that whole process on your own. The moment in time aside, let them rise to the occasion. Let them step out of their box for a minute, and then day to day, 360 out of the 365 days of the year, they're doing the thing that's in their role description. Day in, day out, they're staying in their lane. If you've changed the lane, if they're no longer driving in the slow lane and they're driving in the fast lane, then you have to give them different parameters. You have to give them a different role description. You have to give them a different performance metrics. You have to give them a different title, and you have to evaluate whether you're compensating them appropriately. Full stop. Small businesses can be nimble and dynamic and ask different things of people all they want. And when it's temporary, it's totally okay. When it's permanent, all you're doing is causing confusion if you don't stop, reset, calibrate, align, and try again. I will be emphatic about this until the day that I die. Every single person that you work with and that works for you wakes up every day and wants to do a good job at work. There is not a single person that wakes up and pops out of bed and is like, you know what? Today is the day that I'm going to screw them all over. I'm going to show up and do the worst job ever. Nobody does that. And if they do, they're bad humans. They're bad actors. They shouldn't be working for you, and they probably need to go see a mental health professional. Believe in the good intent of others. Your employees, your coworkers, your peers, your boss is showing up and wanting to do a good job. So just believe it. And if something is happening that is preventing them from doing a good job, generally speaking, it means that there's confusion somewhere. And so if you have people working for you, if you supervise others, if you own a business, the very first responsibility that you have to them is to make sure that they are clear on what they are and are not supposed to do and what success looks like. Okay? So role clarity, the very first one. And then once we're all clear, once everybody knows what their role is and is not, and once they know how the various roles are supposed to be interacting and working with each other, who hands off what to whom, who's accountable to whom for what, and how all the things work together, then, my friends, with clarity comes great responsibility. Because when there is clarity, there cannot be finger pointing. When there is clarity, you have now built a model of accountability. And you should celebrate that whether somebody is taking accountability for the good, the bad, or the ugly, they're taking accountability. Because you can't hide when there's clarity. It gets a little bit scary when there's clarity because you can't lurk in the shadows, because you can't say, not me, I didn't know, not my responsibility. Can't do that. Because not only do you know what is your responsibility, so does everybody else. And you have somebody that you're reporting to that follows up and keeps tabs and encourages you to rise to the occasion. Once you have role clarity, comes great responsibility. Now, this goes both ways. I just talked about the individual's responsibility for them to step up and fulfill their job description and perform as expected. There's also responsibility laid at your feet to follow through. I want you to consider that working in a business and having people report to you is a little bit like parenting. I used this analogy not that long ago. And I have teenagers, and one of them, it was just Halloween recently, one of them thought it'd be cute and suggest that their curfew was midnight. It was hilarious. I actually scoffed, chuckled, laughed out loud, big belly laugh, because that wasn't going to happen. And he was told that he needed to be home, before 9 o'clock. And that was where we ended it. Because I'm responsible for his health and safety and well-being. I'm responsible for setting the boundaries. And also during that conversation, I made it really clear around what he could and couldn't do. I was really specific around, this is as a child that's going out trick-or-treating with his friends on a night that's not a school night. Here are the things that you're responsible for. Here's the behavior that I expect of you. Here's how I'm going to measure whether or not I'm going to trust you to be out there in the wilderness. I'm kidding, he was not in the wilderness. Out there on the mean streets of the suburb in the future. I provided clarity, do and don't, what the expectations were, how we're going to measure whether or not this was a good idea or a bad idea. And when he came back at 9 o'clock and everything was great and, et cetera, we evaluated, was this a success? How did it go? Did you stay within the lines? And just like I set the rules, I set the expectations, and we had a closing conversation about how it all went, as a parent with a 13-year-old that wanted a curfew that was ridiculous, you too have a responsibility to the people that work for you to continue to reiterate what their role is, what they're responsible for, how they should perform and behave. And it's your responsibility to course correct. In the parenting example, if I had not said a word to him, he would have spent his good old life like he could be out until midnight. And there were some things that went down that evening in the small, teeny, tiny town that we live in that could have been dangerous for him if he had stayed out until midnight. There could have been dire consequences if I hadn't stepped in and reminded him around what his role in this big old situation called life was and put the boundaries back in place. So just like your employees, it's your responsibility when they step out of line, when they one too many times do the work for somebody else, when they sit back on their heels and they don't fulfill their responsibilities to the company, it's your responsibility to hold them to the line. It's your responsibility to give feedback and hold them accountable. And ultimately, it's your responsibility to act if they just can't get it together. With clarity comes responsibility to all parties, okay? And then what you're doing is you're building a culture of accountability. You're building a culture where your team is clear on what they are supposed to be doing, what the boundaries are for what decisions they can make, what recommendations they can give, what actions they can take, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they become accountable for the results. Because when they're clear on what's expected of them, when they take responsibility for the actions that are expected of them, and they do so with the level of quality, or they don't do it with the level of quality expected, they will be accountable for the results, whatever they are. You see, clarity and responsibility and accountability stack on top of each other, and what happens is you eliminate the blame game culture. You eliminate things literally getting dropped into the cracks and crevices. You eliminate staying awake at night wondering who was going to forget what next. Leaders of all types, big business, small business, brick and mortar, e-commerce, professional services, technology, I could go on and on and on. They all have the same fundamental worry. Do I have the right people doing the right things at the right time? And do they know what they're supposed to be doing? And the only way for you to eliminate the worry, the only way for you to sleep well at night, not spinning your wheels on the answers to those questions, is for you to provide clarity, for you to maintain expectations, for you to measure performance and provide feedback and foster an environment of accountability. Because when you do that, everybody behaves through that lens, which means they collaborate, which means they meet deadlines and due dates, which means they communicate with each other, which means they answer questions when you ask. It means that they are constantly using their brains and building a better mousetrap because they are inspired to do so because they know what's expected of them. It all begins with clarity. And it's not a one-shot, once and you're done sort of situation. It's something that you have to do over and over and over again. You know, when I worked in business, in big corporations, one of the nicknames that I had was Chief Repeating Officer. And it's because I literally said the same thing over and over and over again, all of the time, over and over and over again, because people forget. And almost all of the people that you're going to be working with and for have worked other places before, so they have bad habits. They have ways that they want to do things that maybe are misaligned to yours. And so the best way, after you've defined clarity, is to ensure that it remains clear and it doesn't get murky, is to repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. And that was why I was called the Chief Repeating Officer, because I was constantly communicating what the core values were. I was constantly communicating what expectations were. I was constantly communicating what the mission of our team was. I was constantly communicating what our responsibilities were to our clients. I was just over and over and over. And those that worked with me, they will tell you that when I would get impassioned because I was being clear and there was only a modicum of responsibility being taken and people were not stepping up to the plate and they were having some difficult conversations, what would come next is a visionary conversation. I would take each single person and say, you know what your role is, you know what your expectations are, you know how your performance is measured, and I think that you have forgotten why that's so important. And then one by one, we would go down the line, tying that specific person's work to the big vision, to the big goal, to the big results, to the big changes we were making in lives everywhere. At the time, I was working for a technology company that supported insurance companies. So we really sold unsexy things. Wi-Fi is not sexy. Call center technology, the opposite of sexy. But here's the thing. If there is a natural catastrophe, a hurricane, and you have travelers that are stranded and they bought travel insurance, and you have homeowners who completely lost everything because of the hurricane, and you have family members who unfortunately lost somebody to the natural disaster, and they need life insurance money to rebuild a home. When you have all of those things, you know what they do? You know the first thing they do is? They pick up the phone and they call their insurance company. And you know what their first interaction point is? It's call center technology. So as much as what we did was not sexy, the importance of what we did, being that first point of contact, that first connection point between the one with the tragedy and the helpers, that was what was on the line. That was why role clarity was so important, and clear responsibilities and accountability and understanding performance. And I would go down the line and communicate stories just like that, about how what we did seemed so inconsequential in the big cog of this insurance company, but in the end, we were the first point of contact when somebody was having a tragedy. Shame on you for not doing the very best job you could do. And that, when I say that you need to provide clarity and you need to ensure that there's responsibility and they all understand that there's a great responsibility on you to continue to communicate why what they do and what they do with excellence is so important to the bigger picture. Your job as the leader, as the department head, as the CEO, as the business owner, is to make sure that everybody understands what they're supposed to be doing, when they're doing it, and how to do it, so that that big vision that big payoff, that big result for the people that you serve, the businesses that you serve, is achieved. And so when you have done all of the foundational work, you've written the job descriptions, you've figured out the compensation, you've had the conversation, everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, you're holding them accountable, you're measuring performance, and things are still not going as planned. You're still seeing fingers getting pointed. You go back to the basics. You go back to the very, very beginning and you say, I need to reestablish clarity and I need to inject it with a little bit of emotion, because what they do not understand is why it's so critical that they stay on mission, because when they stay on mission, this thing is achieved. I know that we're not all doing brain surgery. I know that we are not all on the forefront of technology. I know that we are not saving lives. I know that for most of us, we're selling goods or services that are going to make somebody's life just a little bit better. And what I do know is that while you are a for-profit business, you're also a for the people business. And when you can find those stories, when you can find the reason why, and when you see your team go off the rails and start pointing fingers and losing steam and not using their brains and stepping all over each other and balls getting dropped, that's the opportunity and the time for you to go back to the very beginning. And you push the reset button and you are very clear about the expectations and why they matter. This is a lifelong pursuit for you of leadership excellence. Having a team that's not working well together ultimately is because you're not leading them well. It's the facts. And the good news is that it's very simple tweaks that we have discussed in this podcast that you can make to get the team back on track. Now, some are not going to rise to the occasion. So some of this work is going to happen and they're still going to point the finger. They're still going to sit back and cross their arms and not want to participate. Cool. Let them. And let them do it somewhere else. I'm not sharing all of this information with you to say, and you get to keep everybody happy forever and ever and amen. There's going to be some people that are not happy. But the good news is that you identify them really quickly, because when you're clear, when you start with clarity, then it also becomes clear who doesn't belong. So while I'm out talking to my people, because I swear I'm like a small business owner magnet, which is phenomenal. I wish I could talk to all of you in real life because I love your businesses so much. But when I'm out there in the world, the first question I always ask is, how does your team work together? And that tells me a lot about the business, because often if I ask somebody what's going on with your business and somebody says, I wish that we were making a little bit more money, I always know that underneath that is they wish their team were performing better, always. So you have an opportunity right now, because you just listened to me talk for, I don't know, near on half an hour, to take these principles and go back into your business or your team or your corporation or your wherever and apply them. I manage people for literally 25 years. I started managing people, I think, when I was 16 years old. And this expertise, this advice that I'm giving you, is because I tried a whole bunch of stuff that didn't work. Carrot and stick and all sorts of things that I was coached to do. And in the end, friends, the recipe is so very simple. Provide clarity, set expectations and measurements. With clarity comes implied responsibility. And when there's clarity and responsibility, there's accountability. And when things go sideways, go back to start. I hope this was helpful to you. I love talking about team dynamics and the things that you can do for your team. I want to really encourage you that as you get closer to the beginning of 2025, that it's a great time to push the reset button and make sure that you have roles defined really well, that you understand who's supposed to do what and what they're not supposed to do, and you start off 2025 really, really strong with everybody on the team really clear about what they should and should not be doing. So I wish you the best of luck with this, and please know until we talk next that you are wise and you are strong and you are capable, and I believe in you.